So now I want to try some tweening on a new layer. I'm going to go to my timeline and click on the new layer icon. I'm going to turn the visibility off on my previous layer and also lock that previous layer so that I know that I'm definitely working on this one. And notice if you have a previous layer, when you create a new one, it's automatically going to put the keyframe distance down for the entire duration. You can always come back in and change that later. For this one, I'm going to start on the first keyframe, and I'm going to go ahead and draw an object. Now, since on my screen at least there seems to be a limited sizing here, I want to pull this toolbar out here so I can see all of my options, because sometimes you don't get the object draw option here. Then I'm going to make myself a square, switch to the move tool, which is the black arrow, and kind of get myself set up here. Now I'm going to click on the square and click on the keyframe and then hold down Control and tell it I want to create a motion tween in this case. And I'm going to say OK to the dialog box that it's going to convert it into a symbol. And then I want to go to wherever it is that I want to finish my motion. In this case, I'll go all the way to the end and select that keyframe and then reselect the box as well. So I'm selecting where on the timeline it's going to happen, and then I'm selecting what it's going to happen to. And when I do that, you'll notice that the properties palette pops up with more things available. So one thing I can do to this object is simply to move it. So let me try moving it from one side to the other, and notice I'm holding down Shift, not Option because I'm not duplicating it, but I'm holding down Shift because if I don't do that, then it can go anywhere, and I want it to stay aligned with this. Depends on what you want, whether you do that or not. And you'll notice that when I've successfully moved it from one place in one time to the other on the timeline and from one location to the other, that this little path area shows up. And then if I scrub back and forth, I can see what the motion is. Now I'm going to do Command Z to undo this and show you what one of the mistakes could be is if I set this up and I start just like I did before on the first keyframe, I start with my box and I see the properties palette and I go, okay, I'm going to move this from one side to the other. All right, what did I just do wrong that I didn't do before? I had not changed what time I wanted to move it at. I had kept my cursor on the first thing. So you want to keep remembering you've got your stage area and you've got your timeline, and you keep needing to check where you are located on both of those, not just on one of those. So in that case, all I did was just move the square from one place to the other. So even though I had selected Motion Tween, it can still move it. So I'm going to Command Z back again, so I'm on the other side, and notice that it stays in one place through the whole thing. So what I wanted to do was go to the point on the timeline where I want it to move. Let me try it halfway this time. So I have that selected, and then I actually do the movement. Now notice between that dot and this dot, that keyframe and this one, it moved position. Now, if I go to the end of this, since there's no keyframe here, it just keeps the same position as it had for the last keyframe. So if I come down to the end here, I can now move it somewhere else. Let me try moving it vertically this time. And notice the path changed. And notice that there's a dot for each time that I changed it. Now I can scrub back here and see that change. Let's say I wanted to take this a little bit further. Let me just go ahead here a little bit and Control click, and I'm going to insert a keyframe, and I'm going to say all because I don't know, I might do position, I might do scale, so I'm just going to go ahead and say all. And then on that one I can select my square, select my location, and go ahead and move it again. Now if I wanted to go back and make an edit to one of these positions, I want to make sure that I'm on the appropriate keyframe when I do that. If I was on a different keyframe, I would be actually adding something, and you see that that changes that adds a point on here, and that adds a point on the area. So if I simply want to move it, I want to make sure that I'm right on top of that keyframe, and then I could move, and now it'll take a slightly different trajectory. And let's say I wanted it to stop a little bit earlier. I wanted to move these keyframes. I can take this and, move this back a little bit. Actually, I'll come to that in the next video. So I think this is enough to get started on the motion tween part for now.